Welcome back. South Africa's development indicators were released last week, and on the face of it, that's nothing to get wildly excited about. However, it should get you excited. It's a thick book filled with statistics on how we've done on things like housing, health, education, corruption, job creation, and the elimination of poverty. It shows a country utterly different from 1994, where much progress has been made, but massive problems remain. In education, the number of young kids, 0 to 4-year-olds, attending early learning centres has more than tripled in the last 10 years. Teacher-pupil ratios are down and more kids are passing matric. But it's honest that far too few children are excelling in maths and science, something we know. In health, life expectancy is up, severe malnutrition is sharply down, as is infant mortality. There are far more formal houses now, much better access to potable water and sanitation. But there's so much more to talk about. Joining me to discuss this are Obed Bapela, Deputy Minister in the Presidency for Performance Monitoring and Evaluation, and Mmusi Maimane, National Spokesperson for the Democratic Alliance. Good evening, gentlemen. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Bapela. Beyond the obvious need to track just what government has delivered, why are these indicators so important, and what do you hope South Africans will see when they look at them?
Well, the statistics are produced every year, so this is the 6th report since we started with the indicators. And we just hope that South Africans of all walks of life, those in decision-making, those in political parties, in the academics, can then read and see where the country is, so that even when we begin to deal with the challenges, we can then begin to appreciate where we have made progress. And I know that South Africans are more critical about their own country, where it is and the direction in which it takes. But please, if you could also look at the statistics and indeed say South Africa is a better place, better than before 1994. But yes, there are challenges that are still with us. And the report does indicate even some of those challenges, not hiding them away.
Mr. Maimane, the report shows that South Africa is a vastly different place than it was in 1994, a vastly improved place. The government's made real gains when it comes to things like crime fighting, education, health. Wouldn't you agree that this ANC-led government's actually done rather well?
I think, Ben, that's a very important observation to note, the fact that we're trying to overcome a very difficult historical prejudice of an apartheid legacy. There's absolutely no question about the fact that one of the things I found quite positive and good about the report is that it gave us an assessment of what policies we've taken in the last number of years. What is key to note is the fact that under one policy decision and direction, we've seen certain outcomes, but what we mustn't be deceived about is the fact that under the same policy processes, because what's important to also note is that in as much as we've overcome, we're working at overcoming the legacy of apartheid, we equally so in the policy choices that we've made have arrived at certain things. And I think we must be concerned not only about the improvement in the access of education for young people, but equally the quality of that education. What is the outcome when a matriculant gets there? Why is it that our maths and science literacy reports are that low? When you then take another policy framework that we've taken as to what our macroeconomic indicators are, the facts on the table is that our economy has not been favorable to young people. And that's a policy decision that we've taken. So 68% of young people are unemployed as an argument. And so I think where we sit currently at the moment is that we have a number of years that we've gone under. It's very clear that the last 5 years, for argument's sake, have seen the reversal of some of the gains that we've made. And what is become even more critical that we need to answer is, what does South Africa's trajectory look like if you were sitting back today and saying, well, what do the next 10 years look like? What are my kids going to inherit in this country?
What do the next 10 years look like? When you look at the statistics of the indicators, Mr. Bapela, what does it tell you about South Africa today and where it's going in the next 10 years?
Well, fortunately, we now have a new plan called the National Development Plan that has been embraced by almost all South Africans, save for a few that have made noise and pointing at some issues there. But when you develop a plan, you need to move with the nation. It should not be a plan that is only for the ANC or the Alliance. It's a plan that must speak to all South Africans of all walks of life. And for that, at least we're appreciating that South Africans are together on that plan. So it's the issue of the implementation.
Well, are they? I mean, at the end of the day, the people that have been most vociferous about this, the National Development Plan, are people within the tripartite alliance.
Well,
that's concerning.
Well, it's concerning, but we have said, and I think, and President Jacob Zuma had said it, that we are going to move on, we are going to be implementing it, and then those who are raising issues, please give us ideas, what is it that can work for the nation, not only for you as a party, but what can work for the nation. I think until we arrive at that particular consensus, we'll move on, but majority of South Africans are moving on. The investment in the infrastructure, presidential infrastructure coordinating commission of over 1 trillion rands on the modernization of our infrastructure, new rail works, and then expansion of our ports, and then so forth, is another element that by 2030, South Africa, indeed, when we look back, we must even be saying is far more better than what it is today. And I agree that the issue of unemployment is a worrying element. 70% of young people are unemployed, they can't get the jobs. The matric pass, whilst it has improved, but the number of people who do not reach matric is also worrying. So in the box called education, there are quite a number of issues that we still have to deal with as a nation. Whilst enrollment has gone up, and I agree with Maimane here, Mmusi here, to say, definitely, we need then to begin to say what is in this box that we can then do better and then improve on it going forward.
Mmusi, Maimane, I mean, for all the criticism of government economic policy, it's been relatively conservative over the last 20 years, certainly on a macroeconomic level, but it simply hasn't delivered the sorts of jobs that South Africa needs. And how can our society move on if jobs aren't created?
Undeniably. Not only has it failed at delivering jobs, but we've equally failed at the retention of capital in this country. We've expatriated it. And that's been a policy that has been adopted under the ANC rule. We've also equally so focused almost extensively on investment into big business, which, if you follow the trend of big business, you must appreciate that from a profit-making point of view, big business has in fact, post the recession, focused itself on in fact controlling its own labor costs. And labor in this country, indeed, as we can see in the week that we're in under labor unrest, has made our environment not one that is always favorable towards foreign direct investment, which invest in new problems.
Has business played its role, though, over the last 20 years?
Well, I think we must talk about confidence. We must talk about investor confidence. We must talk about how we can ensure that people feel that there's policy certainty. I think we mustn't get away too quickly from the fact that if we say we have one plan, the National Development Plan, which we as a party have said, give us the money so that we can invest in it, so we can trial it out, see what the errors are. But while the alliance is still in its own self inconsistent in terms of decision, it doesn't spare confidence in people saying, I want to invest in this country. It doesn't say to business, let us invest in this country. And so the South African interest has been lost in all of those players of uncertainty. What we need is indeed strong leadership that says to ourselves, this is the direction we're going to go. We need policy certainty so that we can say from this year to next year, this is what the world would look like. Nobody can predict that with an absolute science, but we need to be able to say, this is the policy we're adopting, and we're not certainly going to be changing backwards and forwards. Use the youth wage subsidy as an example. In 2010, the president pronounced on this issue. We could have had 400,000 jobs if we're talking about it today. For a couple of years later, alliance partners have been going backwards and forwards. We haven't created those jobs. So I feel we need to get to a space where we say, this is our policy certainty and this is the route we're going to go.
I think the 400,000 jobs is probably fairly optimistic, I would have thought, in
well,
the last couple of years.
I must say it is, because they tried it in the Western Cape, and then when you look at the quarterly labor surveys, Western Cape has lost, whilst other provinces have gained. So if indeed it was perfect, the youth wage subsidy in the Western Cape, why has it declined instead of appreciating? Those are the issues that we can then say, is it a working model or not a working model? I don't say we should have just moved out of it, but there were concerns raised. We had to listen to those concerns, and then indeed we have listened. And now there's youth employment accord. That money ought to be driven into that direction so that new jobs are created. And I think the labor movement was raising the issue that if we don't create new jobs, this money will just be subsidizing the current jobs that are there. So, and I think those are the issues that we could not ignore.
Sure. I just want to move on. Something more positive on transformation. The number of top managers who are black has doubled since the year 2000. The number of senior managers who are black has tripled. that's something to be very happy about.
Definitely, the middle class in South Africa has grown. That is why even your international stars like Ari Kelly's and others, each time they come, the halls are full. You can see there, but we have a lot of people in the margins, in the periphery, that we still have to do a lot. The poorest of the poor and the poor, and I think that's where we have to really maximize our effort in ensuring that they also are brought up. But indeed, it's good news that middle class is grown.
On a more negative note, fewer South Africans of all races believe that racial interaction is getting better in this country. Why do you think that is?
I think, let me just to answer a former statement, which is important, because that's a very critical thing, that the diversification of the middle class is a very critical component that has come on. And our support of legislation such as BEE and land reform have been very key, and I think we need to broaden that. We need to broaden the space that we can do that. But I think we cannot
briefly
lament. We've got to, when we talk about race relations, we mustn't forget that in an economically strenuous situation, people tend to regress back into their lagers. And we've got to deal with the economic indicators in order that we can build a growing economy, but also value the sense of reconciliation and diversity. We've got to uphold it, and Nelson Mandela was the champion of that, and we've got to continue that same spirit and not tolerate when people in fact want us to regress and make statements publicly that in fact make us enemies of one another. You know?
More agreement than disagreement from the members of the DA and the ANC tonight. Good to see. Fascinating stuff, and much more to talk about. And I think when we really look at where South Africa was in 1994, it's clear that this country is much changed from then. Obed, Bapela, Mmusi, Maimane, thanks for joining us. After the break, the winner and the loser of the week.
News that moves. ENCA.com.